Welcome to Alpha in the Room, Burnout. And today we're going to talk about burnout, of course. But before we begin, I just want to do one quick thing, which is we need to have a conversation here, which is we need to be kind to one another. And the reason I'm saying that is because this is a very hard year for many of us. We feel like we have no control in our life. We cannot plan the next day. We cannot plan a week out, months out, because it seems so uncertain. And because of that, humans, we don't really know how to be. And so I really hope you understand that we're all not ourselves as our usual self. And because of that, we have to try our best to be in check with ourselves and be kind to one another. The one thing I will definitely say is that this year has also brought a lot of mental health up to the ground. I mean, above the ground. What I mean by that is that those that didn't have ever anxiety or depression are now experiencing these feelings. And it's really hard for them because they never knew that they had these issues or that they ever could feel this way. So we need to do whatever we can to try to help each other out at this time. And by doing that is just simply understanding you do not know what they're going through. You do not know their backstory. So when someone is posting something on Twitter, take that moment to take a step back. If it's not about you, don't get yourself involved. If it somehow is connected to you, then yeah, you should probably get involved. But remember to try to be as kind as possible, because you don't want to be that person that does something that really hurts someone and they do something very drastic. So please be kind to one another, because when we're kind to one another, we support one another, we're able to try to unite the people around us. And that's what we need more than ever, right? It seems like we're in the middle of a chaos and we need to be united. So let's be that community. Let's unite with one another. Let's be kind to one another. And that means on Twitter as well. So I just wanted to say that before we begin. So if you do not know who I am, my name is Chloe Messdaghi. I am an InfoSec advocate and activist. I'm also the VP of Strategy over at Point 3 Security, and also the co-founder of Hacking Is Not a Crime, where we basically are working with organizations that are pushing for hacker rights, to try to change public awareness of what is a hacker, and also to try to get us rights, but also to change how the media portrays us. I'm also the president and co-founder of VetSec, which is Women of Security, and founder of We Are Hackers, formerly known as Women Hackers. And when I'm not doing that, I am a hacker book club organizer with my fellow Angela and Casey as my other organizers. And we meet every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time to talk about a book. And the books we pick every month, there's one new book. And we have the author and those mentioned in the book join us for these sessions. So it's a really good interaction, a way to get a little bit deeper than what's in the pages. Also a podcast of our ITSP magazines, The Uncommon Journey with Alyssa Miller and Phil Wiley. That is my website. If you want to know anything about me inside InfoSec and outside InfoSec, you can find pretty much everything on there. My Twitter and Instagram handles right there, and feel free to follow. Also, my DMs are always open just in case if you guys want to reach out at any time. All right, now let's go into the actual talk now. So I'm going to give you different types of scenarios so you can have a better understanding how burnout works. And maybe this might be one of those moments where you realize, I guess I'm dealing with burnout. So first things first, I want you to imagine that you're driving in your car. And while you're driving in your car, you look to the left and you're like, well, I need to merge into that lane. However, the thing that goes through your mind is, what happens if I don't look in my mirror? You know, if I don't look in my mirror and I merge into that lane, then I don't have to, if I get a car accident, then I don't need to do anything. I don't have to do that assignment. I don't need to go to that meeting. I don't have to go to that event. I get completely out of this entire situation. Or for example, you used to respond to emails. Took you only a few minutes. Now it's taking you an hour, couple hours, maybe a day, maybe a few days. And now your inbox used to be more of like that zero inbox person. And now you're like overwhelmed with the amount of emails that are coming in. Or sometimes burnout comes in this way, where basically you have your friends and family, they reach out to you by text message and you don't respond until much later. And it's not because you're busy, it's because you're afraid that they're going to give you more tasks on top of you're already feeling like you're drowning in them. And you can't feel like you could be there for them, so you take a step back, so you don't contact them in return. This is something that's really, really common because some of us, when we are overly anxious about all the things that are happening in our life, we don't want to try to burden other people, especially if we feel like they're going through stuff too. So we keep it to ourselves. And this is one of the other reasons that you may not try calling the person back or responding in a better timing. And by that, I mean, like, you don't respond within like, a few minutes, or you just always press decline. It doesn't mean you don't love them or care about them. It's just because you have taken on too much stuff, or you don't want to burden someone. Burnout also could come in different ways as well when it comes to your emotions. So for example, you could be suddenly sad to suddenly angry. Little things will like just pivot you in a way that you didn't see coming, and it's not like how you used to be. Another thing to note is that people that usually experience burnout, the symptoms can be this feeling of emptiness, loneliness, trappedness, and that also takes on your emotions. So people that are experiencing burnout, if they do not take the steps to mitigate it or to reduce it, this could end up actually becoming anxiety and depression. So it's really important is for you to be aware of where you are and where you're standing, and try to be there for others during this time. Now, also burnout, it comes with the sense of procrastination. However, the procrastination is a little bit more different. Procrastination is like, okay, if I know my deadline, and what I'm going to do is just wait till last minute because then I can focus and get it done. That's usually how procrastination works. Now with burnout, it's a little bit different. It's more of like you keep pushing out dates. You're like, well, I don't need to actually get that done on that date. I could just keep pushing it out. Or it's more of like, well, I could try to get out of this meeting because I need to get out of this meeting. So the whole idea of procrastination is very different when it comes to burnout. It's more like you're pushing out deadlines. So then suddenly your tasks get on more and more and more because you can't focus, to be real. So with burnout, the other things to note is that if you're walking into the burnout field or you're in the burnout field, you'll realize you'll be taking on a little bit more caffeine than usual. This also means that you may be needing more than one glass of wine per night. It might be like a whole bottle. No, seriously, you shouldn't do that anyway. But the thing is that when we're overwhelmed and stressed, we tend to go for like all the different things, such as cigarettes, from marijuana to alcohol, to more caffeine, to more sugar, to salty foods. And that's the same thing you kind of see in burnout. However, it's a little bit more than that, because with stress, you're like, I'm going to just stress eat this, and I'm going to, I'll feel a little bit better maybe the next day. The thing with burnout is a continuous cycle. So it's a pattern. So you're going to take in more sweets, you're going to take in more salty things. You might not even take in any food. Another thing to know about burnout is that you may not even want to eat, or you don't eat as much as you used to. So it's really important to be aware of that. The other thing is drinking and smoking is definitely one of those things where if you're doing more than your usual, you probably need to take a step back. But overall, burnout, we usually think of the person is just so tired. So tired. Like no matter how many hours of sleep you get, you're just so tired. And the reason for that is because maybe you're not sleeping well. Because with burnout, you might have insomnia a bit. When we don't get our precious hours of sleep, between 7 to 9 hours, that's right, it's 7 to 9 hours that you actually need daily. We're going to feel a little bit more tired, a little bit more groggy, feel a little bit more exhausted. But we also will have like our emotions will go from from left to right as well when we don't get proper sleep. So the thing is, burnout, even if you're getting the deepest sleep possible, you still feel exhausted every day. But how burnout, if you really want to think about it, how does it look like? It's like a battery. It's like you have been basically at your red point or your 10% point for quite some time now, and you need to recharge. So burnout is all about recharging your batteries. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that burnout is different from stress, and I really hope you can understand this. So stress is something like, okay, if I take that bubble bath, I'm going to feel a little bit better, and I'm going to feel a little bit better. Or if I have that glass of wine, I'm going to feel a little bit better. Now, with burnout is I could take all the bubble baths, drink all the wine, I'm not going to feel better. That's the difference. So stress is something like, if I do something, I'm going to feel better. Burnout is no matter what you do, it doesn't, like, usually to help with your stress, it's not doing it for you. That's the difference between burnout and stress. Stress can be healthy at times. Burnout is definitely not a healthy thing. I want to just reiterate here that I'm not a therapist, you guys, but I have talked to therapists and psychologists around burnout to try to figure out what is the best solutions for people in our community. So this is how this talk got created, was because I worked with them on these things, but also I myself am someone who has dealt with burnout. And so I'm looking forward to answering all your questions at the end, because I know that you might have some. So I'm making sure that I get through this as soon as possible, but I am not a therapist. I'm just someone who wants to share some knowledge. But the first things first is always see a doctor. And I know it's this really scary time to go visit your doctor, but get your vitals checked. If you're starting to have any of those symptoms that I shared earlier with you, this might be a good time to talk to a doctor. And the reason I say that is because you need to check your vitals. I thought that I was dealing with burnout last year, but it turned out it wasn't burnout. It was because I had an iron deficiency. So one of the things that you should note about is that when you are depleted of iron, vitamin D or vitamin Bs, you will have lower energy levels. So you're going to feel a bit more exhausted. And for some people, they also have emotions that go all over the place when their iron is low. So it's really important is to make sure that your blood work is A-okay with your iron, vitamin D, and vitamin Bs. So just make sure on that front beforehand, because it's something you can easily address by taking or having more nutrition in your diet. So what is burnout? This is the actual textbook definition. So burnout is a state of emotional, physical, mental exhaustion caused by excessive, prolonged stress. It occurs when you feel overwhelmed, emotionally drained, and unable to meet constant demands. That quiz right there is really good if you're trying to figure out, do I have burnout or not? But just note that that quiz might not work very well for you if you like the work that you do. So if you like your job and whatnot, that might not be relevant for you. But however, we're going to go through this together. So then you already have your examples of what burnout can be like and what it looks like. So we can start going into when you start seeing those patterns show up, what to do next so you can prevent burnout. But also if you are currently burnout, I will tell you how to solve that. But first, I want to just talk about emotional burnout. So emotional burnout is burnout, just period, it's burnout. But the thing to note is that because 2020 has been a very surreal year, we are experiencing burnout, and it's not just from work like we usually have in the previous years in InfoSec. It's a lot of emotions this year. We're constantly worried that we might lose someone or we have lost someone. We don't know when things are going to change. And like I said at the very beginning here, as humans, we like to feel like we have control of our life. We like to predict things. In other words, a couple of years ago, you were able to plan out a trip 6 months in advance. You didn't have to think about it, but in reality, things could change like that every time. But this year, it's like you can't even plan out something in 6 months. You don't know when things are going to get better. You don't know when this vaccine is going to happen. Is the vaccine going to work? And that's a huge deal for us as humans. Like I said, we like to feel like we're in control. And the unfortunate bit is that we are not. We never have been, but now it's really we have not. So one thing to keep in mind is that these are things to keep up to date, is to note that these are the normal symptoms of people that are dealing with emotional burnout when it comes to COVID-19. And so just remember that we can do as much as possible, but it's okay to not be okay, but also to note that this might be a good time for you to also seek help outside of your doctor. And by that, I mean a therapist. I am one of those people that are pushing, I believe mental health is just as equal to actually physical health. And I hope that this year companies realize that, because if your mind is not in its right place, or it's not in its normal place, I guess one would say, it's very hard to focus. It's really hard to be who you are, and that can actually do quite damage to your work. So hopefully they realize that. So let's talk about how to prevent. So like I said, how to prevent is something that is possible. Okay, but just note that with emotionals, not emotionals, but the emotions around COVID-19, just note that you're going to do as best as you can. All right. And it's not going to be, I feel amazing this year. That's not what's probably going to happen, but at least you'll have more of self-awareness and control. So then you feel like you can handle the rest of this year or the beginning of next year or so on. So how to prevent burnout? Usually say exercise, eat a balanced diet, practice good sleep habits, ask for help. But in reality, is during COVID-19, it's very hard to get exercise, especially if you can't go to a gym or you don't have a gym in your own home. So the one thing I do recommend is that it is good to try to get exercise and whatnot. So there are some online things on YouTube that you could do at home. But the thing is, you want to get your heart racing, at least 30 minutes a day if you can. If not, like I said, don't feel guilty if you don't. It's okay if one of the days you're like, I can't do it. That's all right. You have to give yourself a hug for that, because the reality is that you are not always going to want to go to the gym or work out for 30 minutes. You're not going to want to do the best you can every single day, and that's okay. Don't feel guilty about it. Eating a balanced diet is really important. Like I said, your vitals are really important when it comes to preventing burnout. So you want to make sure you eat as well as possible. But like I said, it's very hard to do during COVID-19 because we don't really have as many options. Like some of us can't go to the grocery store every week. Sometimes we can only go twice a week. So it's really hard to get that balanced diet, but try your best as possible. And yes, I'm talking about junk food. So, allow yourself to have a couple of cheat days if possible, but don't feel guilty. Once again, if you go into non-balanced diet for a day, don't feel guilty. It's okay. It's all right. So don't shame yourself for that. But just note that you want to try your best. And, there's going to be days where you're going to need to have cheat days, and it's totally okay. I usually use my cheat days as the weekends. Practice good sleep habits is very important. Like I said, if you're not getting your proper 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night, and I know many of us don't do that because we're in InfoSec, that's going to contribute to you having burnout and also having a harder time understanding what's going on emotionally. So it's really important to get your good sleep. And if you're wondering, how do I get good sleep? Well, first things, what you can do is talk to your doctor. But there are these melatonin gummies that I usually take. I think it's by Rescue Remedy. So I take 2 of those a night if I feel like I cannot fall asleep. But also that means getting off your devices at least 1 hour before bed. That should help you too. So also you want to have as dark as possible a room. This is a true statement. So what you need to do is get your blackout curtains if you don't have them already. I do blackout curtains. I kid you not, I have like a ritual. I do the blackout curtains, and then I have my eye shades and I have earplugs, because I cannot get interrupted sleep. I'm like, no, I don't want interrupted sleep. So I try everything possible to make sure that I don't get interrupted sleep. But the one thing for sure is that I know that it's hard to have good sleeping habits every single day. But like I said, you want to try your best, get off your devices 1 hour before. Don't look at the news before bed. Just don't do it. I'm just going to put it out there. Just don't do it. And don't do it right when you wake up either. It's never a good thing. Have a certain amount of time that you look at the press and whatnot. Ask for help is also one of those things that you can do regardless of what year it is. Asking for help, there's no changes there. We can always ask for help. The most important thing is that you ask for help. Please don't see it as like, I don't want to burden people, because in reality, people are here to help you. We are a community. We try our best to help one another. So it's really important is to ask for help and be okay with asking for help. That I know is a struggle for many of us, but try your best, because you don't want to feel alone, and no one should feel alone at this time. So let's dive into the real ways of also preventing it. Like I said, you need to have self-awareness. If you don't have self-awareness, you won't know that you're burned out. So those practices before, those examples of basically when it comes to, driving your car, to your inbox, to your emotions going left and right, to the exhaustion, no matter how many hours of sleep that you get. When you start noticing those signs, that's really important for you to start taking the steps to try to change the situation. So self-awareness is really important, because usually when those that aren't self-aware of that they're entering in a burnout or at the beginning stages of burnout, it becomes one of those situations where then you are dealing with a bigger burnout situation, which we'll dive into a little bit later. So the sooner that you've recognized that you're going through burnout, the better for you to repairing. But also these are ways how to prevent it. So keeping the burnout very low, also to reducing it significantly as well. If so you don't have the feelings of burnout or the emotions of burnout. So how you get self-awareness, for those that don't know about these things, I recommend the following things. So one of the things that I do, and I have props, you guys, is I journal. Yes, I'm a fan of Little Prince. I journal, I try as often as possible, but you kind of want to do it every day. But if you can't do it every day, do it once a week. And like I said, don't shame yourself if you do not have the ability to do that. But just be on top of it. Journaling is one of those things that you're really having a better understanding what's going on deep down inside, because we're always consumed with everything around us, is that we totally forget what's going on deep down inside that we don't really know usually. So when you write, the most important thing that you can do is go through your entries and try to catch certain words. So if there's ever, you'll see patterns in a sense, and we love patterns and whatnot, but the patterns that you're going to see is emptiness, trappedness, and not just that, just the feelings of overwhelmed. When you start seeing that showing up in your journal entries, that's letting you know you're dealing with burnout already. So just keep an eye on and revisit the sections that you write in, so you have a good idea of where you're standing. The other thing is taking a break. You need to take a break. That means turning off your phone once a week. So I usually do on Sundays for the whole day. I kid you not. What I do is I text my parents and my closest friends, and I'm like, okay, I'm going offline for a whole day. If you need to get a hold of me, this is what you can do. But I'm getting off my devices, and I'm getting also off of social media for the day. And this is something that's really helpful, because you want to get that break from InfoSec. 1 day per week, commit to yourself that you will not do anything InfoSec related. And the reason for that is that we need to find a better balance. And in our industry, we struggle to have that balance. So we need to have a balance between our work and personal life, because you have a life outside of InfoSec. And if you don't right now, that's letting you know it's time for you to make a life outside of InfoSec for at least 1 day per week. So it's really important to take that break, so then you can recharge your batteries a bit, because social media, it's, we're on it for hours. So it's a good time to just get away from it. So 1 day per week. And if it's really hard to get off a whole day, you can actually try just for like 4 to 6 hours or more. So just keep that in mind, is that take that time, take that break. That's going to be really useful for you. Okay, next thing. Write it down. So remember when I said having good sleep is really important? So you need to have a good sleep. So one of the things that I do is I have a to-do list, and the to-do list I take everywhere in my place. But also when I wasn't dealing with COVID-19 around here in 2020, I would carry this to-do list everywhere I would go. And I would put everything on there from my personal to work to projects. Everything would go down on this list, and I would cross them off whenever I no longer, when I complete the task. And the reason for that is because, for example, when you're about to go to sleep, an idea comes through your mind like, oh my God, I forgot to send that email. Or, oh, I should do that. Why am I not doing that? And you start thinking about it, and then you can't go and sleep because you're having this pattern of thought of what I need to do next. So to take that off your plate, having a to-do list is really important. Have it next to your bed so then you can get proper night's sleep, because when we basically write it down, it kind of empties out that spot in that room that it was taking up. So it gives you a better night's sleep. Also, it gives you a better idea of what's on your plate. I kid you not, I think the first time I did it, it took up 5 pages. And then I realized, okay, so I need to do something about this because I've taken on too much. So now it's down to like 1 page. So it's good to know what's on your plate. Also, if there's a way to give it to other people to help you out, or to at least help assist you complete those projects, that's really important. But also it gives you an idea of what to prioritize, what's going on daily. So some other things to do about that is, I'll show you this. All right, so if it's something I need to get done immediately, I put it on, this is my little Shiba notepad. I will put it down on my Post-it, and I'll put it right on the bottom of my computer or on my desk or whatnot. But those are things that I need to get done immediately. So within that morning or by that end of the day, I put on a Post-it. This is really good for me to note that I need to get these things done. And for some reason, as humans, we like checking things off. So every time you get something done, you cross it out, and it feels like a really good feeling. Now, the to-do list, the other thing to, like I keep saying, I think earlier, is that you want to keep a separation from your work and personal life. And by doing that, if you can, have 2 different phones, one for everyone who is not an InfoSec, and then the other phone is for everyone who is in InfoSec. That means also your email. So your personal email versus your work and your InfoSec emails, have that on 2 different devices, because it gives you also that break and breathing room. So then on the weekends, you get to take a step back, but even your evenings during the week, it gives you a time to take a step back. But also make sure you don't have Twitter on your personal device, because you just don't want to do that. You want to take that time off, and that means LinkedIn too. So anything that's work relevant, put it on the other device, if you can. Another way how you can do it, like those to-do lists. So I have these things, and these are my to-do lists. I used to have it just on 1 piece of paper, but I realized that this gives me a little bit more of that break from personal and work life. So for example, this is my personal one. This is the projects that I do. That long list that you saw before, they go in here. And then anything with work, so my point 31 is in here. So these are all my to-do lists, and I just keep these, they're very tiny, but this is what I do to separate my work from personal life. So then I have a better way of relaxing and reducing burnout as much as possible. The other thing to keep in mind is that also volunteering helps. So if you are already experiencing the beginning of burnout, or you want to prevent burnout, volunteering is one of those things that you can definitely do that gives back. There is something about when you give back to society, it gets you out of your head. And the reason I say this is because with burnout, we're too much in our head. And it's good to try to work forward with, I guess this is going to sound corny, with your heart in a sense. When we're trying to when we get out of our head, we have a better idea of how the world works. We start feeling more connected with one another, because the thing is that when we're burnt out, we feel isolated, we feel trapped, we feel alone. But in reality is that when we volunteer, it gives us a pause in our life. It gives us a moment to realize that deep down we're connected, and we have to help and support one another. And that is something that's really powerful. in so many ways. So giving back is a way to really have a better sense of how the world works, but it gives you a better positive view of how the world is and how it can be. So volunteering provides hope in our life. So go out and volunteer. It's a really beautiful thing to do. In many ways, it does prevent burnout, but it also gets you, it also helps with other things such as like getting out of your head, which is one of those things that I think we all struggle to do with in many ways. All right. Now, this is the one thing. If you are a manager right now, please listen carefully. You need to care about your team more than ever before. You need to invest in them. And the reason I say that is because you can prevent burnout happening on your team and with your employees. What I mean by that is set up once a week where you have a no meetings day. It is so critical for people to be able to play catch up, but if they need to take that time off, they need to take that time off. The other thing to keep in mind is that not only is giving 1 day per week as a no meetings day, try to also give 1 day for wellness once a month, which is a day that people can do whatever they want for that day. If that means doing something that's outside of InfoSec, that means a day without InfoSec. If that means them wanting to dive into a project they've been wanting to do at work, then they can do that. But the thing is, giving them 1 day per month where they can do whatever they want is something that's really important because it gives them inspiration, creativity, but also feels like they're being valued. The other thing to note is that let them have their time off. Now, one of the things is that usually when we want to take time off, sometimes managers will tell you, well, can you do it the following week or that other week? Because that'd be really good for me and for the team. The thing is if the employee is coming to you saying, I need to take time off as soon as possible, don't even start there. And don't ask why. Just be like, okay, what days do you want to take off? And the reason I say that is because it's already hard as it is for most employees to go to their manager to be like, I need to take time off, because they don't want to talk about the situation probably, but also because they feel guilty about taking time off. Even if we have unlimited paid time off, we still feel guilty taking time off because we know that when one person is short on a security team, then other people have to take on more work, and that's stressful. But the thing is that when someone gets to a point where they need to take time off, it's important to give it to them. Don't ask questions, just give it to them. If they need to take off that afternoon or if they can't work during those certain hours, don't ask why, just give it to them. We need to be a little bit more relaxed than ever right now because there's a lot happening in everyone's life. So be there by listening. Also, if you want, another suggestion I have is having one-on-ones with each of your employees. That means scheduling 15 minutes calls with your employee and going through the things that need to be done for that week, because then it's a good way to visit to see what you need to prioritize. So it's really important to be there for your employee more than ever, because as a manager, it is your job to see them thrive. A good manager wants to see their employees be able to go beyond them. Be that manager, honestly, but also for you to check in with yourself and make sure that you are being present for them. So just keep that in mind. Now we're going to dive into the parts. So say, for example, you already are burned out. And by burnout, it's more like, well, Chloe, I don't respond to my emails anymore for like a couple of days. Or when I do, it just feels like I'm pulling teeth out or pulling my hair out. Or it could be something like, I just don't want to get out of bed anymore. Or it can be something more like on the lines that I just feel so overwhelmed, I feel like I'm drowning slowly. So the one thing I would definitely tell you is that, so I dealt with burnout in July. And what I did was that I realized I had to take time off. It was the first time in 2.5 years that I took a vacation. And by vacation, I mean a staycation. And it was really, really good. And by that, I mean, like, I got off of everything. I got off of Twitter. I got off of every single device for an entire week, except for my personal phone. And it was so good and refreshing. And like I said, I felt so guilty for wanting to take time off. And it wasn't because of my employer. It was because I was worried about my team. I was worried about, well, who's going to help them in this area or that area. But I realized that that's what makes them a team, is that we have to work with each other. We have to help one another, and so on. So it's okay to be burned out, but you need to recognize your burnout and take steps. Like I said, if you don't, it can lead up to having anxiety or depression. It's really important is to face it like immediately as soon as possible. Also, the going back to kind of normal is a lot faster transition. So if you are feeling lightly burnout, taking off like a couple of days is going to be really good for you and whatnot. But I'm going to be honest with you. You want to take at least 3 business days off. If that's the most that you can take off is 3 business days, then do it. But do it on a Monday, a Tuesday, and a Wednesday. And use that Saturday and Sunday as part of your time off. And what I mean by that is also getting away from your devices. Nothing InfoSec related, nothing work related. Get off online. Just get off your devices and whatnot. It's really important for you to do that. But 3 business days is the bare minimum. If you can, take up to 1 week. If it's a very serious case, 2 weeks. And I know that's really hard to hear. But in reality, if we don't take time off, we start slumping in our work, and then our teammates are then going to have to pick up a lot more work. So it's one of those things that even if you feel guilty at this time, just note that when you're burnt out, you're not 100% you, you are a 10% you, because your battery is so drained. So it's better for you to take the time off so you can recharge your battery, so you can come back being sharper than before. So just remember that, take time off. And like I said, if you are a manager, allow them to take time off. They need it. Don't be that manager that's like, well, you know, I don't know about that. I mean, this person's taking that time off. Who's going to cover it? If you're a manager, you figure it out. I just want to reiterate that because I've heard too many stories this year about this. All right. The other thing to note about burnout, remember that to-do list that I told you about? It used to be 5 pages long. I had to learn how to say no. And that was quite a journey. Still on that journey, by the way, but learning to say no is really important. So having that to-do list gives you an idea of how much stuff you've committed to, and it makes you realize that you have to start using the word no. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that if you're someone who's underrepresented in the field or someone who's an overachiever, the one thing is that you get your work done. You get it done real fast. And you also are noted for being able to take on multiple hats because, you know, they just give you more work. But the thing is that you need to tell your employer no. If they're like, I need you to do this for me. Oh, I need you to do that. And it's not part of your job, tell them. I know that's really hard to say and whatnot, but I kid you not, a couple of years ago, I worked at a company where I became a secretary for some reason, because of my gender, I guess. And so on top of my job, I was doing all this other stuff and then also being a secretary as well. And that was very, very difficult in a sense that I felt even more burned out, stretched out, and also I didn't feel appreciated or recognized for the work and that I contribute. By giving more work does not mean you're recognizing the employee as being a star achiever. By giving them more work, you're literally telling them, well, you got this done, so let's give all your other team work, all your team members work over to you. Don't do that. But also you need to learn to say no. That's really important. And if you work at a company that's doing that to you right now, and saying no to them is a very difficult conversation, I suggest you start looking elsewhere because there's plenty of companies out there that are willing to hire you. The other thing is that many people that suffer from burnout, like I said, the overachievers or underrepresented folks, the thing is that we also have this belief that we have to be perfect. I need to get this done. I must accomplish this at this day on this task. I need to be perfect. Oh, you want me to do this? Okay, I will do that perfect too. The reality is that no one's perfect. You will never be perfect. I am sorry to tell you. And we have to keep telling ourselves that we'll never be perfect. We can be as best as we can. But like I said, if we are burned out already, we're only rating on 10% of who we are, not 100%. So just keep that in mind, is that start saying no is going to be one of those things that's going to be hard, but also accept that you're never going to be perfect. And also, if you're an employer, your team's never going to be perfect either. So don't expect that. But the one thing to note is that burnout is one of those things that shows you deep down inside that you are not investing in yourself, and which is the hardest thing. When we're not investing in ourselves and we are letting our work be who we are, then it's a moment for us to reevaluate where we stand. Life is supposed to be full of happiness, and also there comes other things that are not happy, but you want to have the best life possible. And by having the best life possible, you feel like you have lived your life. And it's really hard for people in InfoSec to take that step back and to realize that my life is not my job. And I want to tell you, your life matters in so many ways. Don't let your job be everything of who you are. As someone who has gone through that, your job is not who you are. And I hope you understand that, because there are people around you that love you, support you, and care about you. And it's time for you to start doing that to yourself too. Start caring about who you are. Because the reason you are in this situation is because you haven't been balancing your personal life and your work life, but also because you're not investing in who you are. And you're also not taking the time to be self-aware that you have entered burnout. And remember, if we don't have self-awareness, it's going to become a pattern where we keep reliving the burnout over and over. So keep that in mind. Now, one thing for sure, I just want to reiterate all the following takeaways for you guys. When you feel overwhelmed, do a device detox. In other words, take one day off your phone, off of your computer, off social media once a week. But if you are burned out, remember to take that time off. And that means also taking off from your devices. And remember, minimum of 3 business days, okay? When you feel overwhelmed, invest in yourself. Like I said, invest in you. If you always wanted to try to learn how to paint, then go and learn how to paint. Go buy yourself a kit. The thing is, you need to invest in yourself. By investing in yourself, you are proving to yourself that you care about yourself, you love yourself, and that's really good. You need to appreciate who you are. People are not going to always be around telling you that they appreciate you. You don't need to get it from outside sources. You need to get it from you. And I know that's really hard to do, but you need to find a way how to love yourself. When you feel overwhelmed, ask for help. That's right. You need to ask for help. Don't be the shy person or the person who is worried that you're going to burden someone. Ask for help. They're here. Our community is always there for you to help. When you feel overwhelmed, write it down. Like I said, journaling is one of those things that I didn't ever understand how important it was until I would say 2020. You'll start seeing trends. So make sure that you go over your previous writings in your journal to really keep an eye on it. And like I said, try to do it daily. If you can't do it daily, do it once a week. Like I said, don't feel guilty if you don't do it. We're in a really weird year, so don't feel guilty about it. The other thing is having a to-do list. If you want to do the small little books that separate everything, you can do that, or you just do it on one piece of paper on a sheet. Also, these little things, Post-its, I know it's old school, you guys, but I kid you not, these things work like a charm. Oh, and if you're wondering one thing, which is, well, can I just journal or have a to-do list on my phone? No. And the reason for that is, you know what happens when we're like, oh, I need to do this thing, and you go on your phone, right? You know what you do? You go to your other apps. Yeah, that's right. You don't put down your phone after writing in your to-do list. You go to other things. And the other thing is, remember, we want to get off our devices 1 hour before bed. Right. So having a to-do list that's, by hand is going to be the best thing for you, because you need to get off your devices before bed. But also it helps you put your day in a more of a structured way. So writing it down helps with your memory a little bit more too. by hand, but also it works better than research. I'm just going to say this. Research has shown have a to-do list and journal by hand. Don't do it on a device. It's not the same. And the reason for that is emotion comes, and writing down with your hand, it actually improves memory on that situation. And you're better to have a flow, in a sense, they call. Anyway, when you feel overwhelmed, take a break. Like I said, you need to take at least 3 business days. But if you need to take an afternoon off, you take an afternoon off. Just make sure you need to take the breaks. Tell the people that need to know about it as soon as possible. And for those that are wondering, well, Chloe, I want to take time off, but I'm really, really scared about what happens when I get back. And this is a great question. And the one thing to keep in mind is that what you can do is set your out of office email, basically having it 1 or 2 days after when you get back. So say, for example, if I'm coming back on the 14th, I'm going to let everyone know that I'm coming back on the 15th or 16th. This gives me 1 day to get through all my emails. The other thing to note is to block your calendar for the first day you're back, so then you can get back in the groove as well. So remember, take out of office email, have 1 or 2 days after the date when you get back, and also block your day when you get back as a day for you to get back in the groove. But also email your team members and ask what is the thing that you need to get done immediately within the next 24 to 48 hours. That gives you an idea. Now, the other thing to do is tell your team members that if they need anything from you, to email it while you're away or CC you. Because the thing is that sometimes we have multiple platforms where we message each other on. And the one thing is you want to just have it one place. So don't have it also in Slack, Discord, whatnot, just have it email. This also helps you be able to prioritize things. When you feel overwhelmed, put yourself first. Like I said, you're not putting yourself first if you're feeling burned out and you're not investing in yourself. And that there's a reason why when you're on a flight, they say, please put on the air, do the airbag first with you, then help the person next to you. Because the reality is that you cannot help another person if you are not 100% you. It's very hard to be there for another person when we cannot even be there for ourselves. So it's really important is to be in check with yourself, be self-aware of where you're standing, so then you're able to help others as well. When you feel overwhelmed, no, you're not alone. Please know you're not alone. You should never feel alone. The community is here for you. If you need anything, just DM me. I will help you and put you towards resources as needed. But just don't feel alone during this time. Honestly, ask for help if you need it. If you need to talk to someone about issues,